Join Pastor Jared as he sits down with Nick and Jenny Patey as they talk about foster care, life as educators, and being the hands and feet of Jesus to those who suffer. They will discuss the challenges of being in public education as believers and how to talk to your kids about the challenging things they might be seeing and hearing in our culture today. Welcome to Magnify.
You guys are both teachers. Tell me, what's the weirdest thing that happened today?
The weirdest thing that happened today.
Nick's like, let me sort through the Rolodex of weird.
Well, I'm in a homeschool setting, so the weirdest thing that happened with me was that my son didn't homeschool today because I was watching him for a concussion.
Yeah?
Because Noah got hit with a baseball last night to the head.
That's really terrible to hear, Jenny. I'm curious who hit that baseball.
Nick, can you fill in the gap? Who hit the baseball?
Did anyone in this room
Some
hit that
guy with a
baseball,
beard.
Jenny?
Yeah, some guy with a beard. Who's the coach?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wish we could figure out that mystery.
Yeah, it would be great because it hit him pretty hard.
It was rough.
There was a lot of aggression in that hit anyway.
Yeah, he wasn't right next to the ball when it was hit. He was in the infield.
Hey, good for you for giving him some distance before you.
I mean, how do you do that? How do you hit somebody in the head with a baseball?
I don't know,
that
Nick.
far away.
I can't even hit a baseball, so I have no idea.
I guess,
That's really a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, well, I was going for left or right field.
So you were in
left
concussion
field, that would
duty.
be even worse.
Nick, anything exciting? I'll expand it. Anything exciting or weird happened today?
Exciting or weird? No. Today was just a regular day. I'm sorry. It's not exciting. We were solving volumes of revolution, which is always exciting for me, but my kids don't.
You said not exciting. You were solving volumes of revolution?
Yep.
Get out of here with that stuff.
Yep.
How many volumes? Like 3?
Have you guys seen that very popular GIF right now? Or GIF?
It's GIF. Thank
GIF,
you.
sorry.
But
Thank
good.
you. Where it shows Nicolas Cage like in the side of a car going like, ugh, like he had like a really rough day. And then it goes to the other guy who's smiling, like having a great time. My students made one of me. But so the Nicolas Cage was my students going, ugh, last part of calculus. And then Mr. Patey having the time of his life, you know,
which is like every day in your classroom,
yeah.
right? Listener, I'm here with Nicholas and Jennifer Patey, good friends of mine who have been at Grace a long time, have served in a variety of capacities, have been part of this church family, just love really well, have helped us in our foster care journey, have been part of foster care as well. Both serve as educators in this community. We're just here because we want the Grace family to hear a little bit about your life story, a little bit about your perspective. I think they're just going to be encouraged by some of the things God has led you through and just have a chance to get to know you better. So give us, by way of intro, Nick, we'll start with you. Just give us kind of the 30-second flyover, the Nick Patey life story.
Nick Patey life story.
And fold into that, would you, how you came to faith in Christ.
Okay. I grew up in Saugus, and I went to Saugus High School. My mom took me to church every Sunday and Wednesday growing up. My dad didn't start coming to church till I was probably 8 or 9. So a typical Christian kid growing up in Santa Cruz. It wasn't until junior year in high school I was working at Baskin-Robbins, just trying to mop the floors and get my job done so I could go home. And I had this crazy redheaded boss. And anybody listening to this remembers the Baskin-Robbins out in Saugus, the crazy redheaded boss. He had us always saying, "See you tomorrow," when people walked outside the door. And it like scarred me. Every time I was in a classroom and I saw someone walking out the door, I would want to say, "See you tomorrow." He got really excited. He was about to have a Bible study. Baskin-Robbins closes at 10. He would have his Bible study at 10:30, and you would get free ice cream if you went. He was reading his Bible, getting ready for the Bible study, and I was trying to mop the floors, and he goes, Nick, you gotta check this out. Look at this. No, stop what you're doing. Come look at this. I'm like, okay, go on. What is it, Pete? He goes, look at this. Look what it says right here. It says, if you don't have works, your faith is dead. And he just stares at me. Oh, that's great, Pete. Yeah, okay. But it was that seed that God used him to plant a seed in me right there. And the next couple of weeks, I just couldn't get that out of my head. It's like, what is faith? Anybody can say they have faith. They just believe. Faith? What is faith? And so started this journey on, what is faith? And does my life really reflect that I had faith? That was probably the turning point And then I started taking notes in church. I started paying attention to what was being said. I actually started studying the Bible for myself. That's when God changed me. It was my junior year in high school.
That's awesome. Jenny, how about you?
So I grew up in Orange County, and my parents were not Christians when they got married. They did not grow up in a Christian home. My dad had a Catholic background, and my mom got saved from the next door neighbor, coming over and telling her about Jesus.
That's awesome.
So that's a neat story. My dad came to faith a few years later at a mob event, which was Men of the Bible, at the church they're going to in Yorba Linda. And so my recollection is growing up in a Christian home. But at the very beginning, it was not that way. And so I remember praying a prayer as a little girl in my mom's bedroom and asking Jesus to come to my heart. And so church was always a second family to me. My parents were really involved, deans at the summer camp, just all along the way, a part of it. And so the more I knew about Jesus, the more I wanted to follow him. I remember you talking about praying the rededication prayer probably 12 times. I was probably right there with you, maybe tying you. And so all throughout my younger years, I knew I wanted to follow Jesus. And it was probably in high school and college that I kind of saw the roads a little more clearly, being a student athlete. God really protected me with a lot of youth group friends who just were there for me to kind of keep me away from that party crowd. And so going to college, I think, is where it really became my own because no one was taking me to church anymore. And I had to kind of figure that thing out. But it's kind of been woven into my whole story just from childhood.
That's awesome. And then remind me how you guys met and share your engagement story too.
Well, we met, the short answer is through volleyball. She was a college volleyball athlete, and I didn't have a team I was playing for, so I helped out a lot with the Masters College girls volleyball team. And so we actually both got recruited at the same time to coach for the same volleyball club, and that's where we met. We met at a coach's meeting. I don't think she recognized me, but I recognized her. And when I was driving home with the other two volleyball players from the Masters College, I made sure that they knew that I recognized that pretty girl with green eyes, and they just made fun of me for it.
And then fast forward to tryouts, and that's when we started talking. And what I remember about Nick was he was doing math homework, but it wasn't just regular math problems that I was used to. He was like writing proofs.
Was it like volumes of revolution kind of stuff?
It might have been.
No, it's way
I don't
past
even
that.
know. What I remember is Fibonacci's numbers. That's what I remember from Nick's days in college. But what was very sly was he kept showing up wherever I was at in the tryouts. And then he happened to, work in, hey, we should get phone numbers in case you need a sub. And that's when I started thinking, oh, maybe this guy likes me a little bit.
Yeah, it was her green eyes, but then the conversation just kept me there.
Yeah.
And so I kept following her around.
That's great.
We went snowboarding, hung out, and then he asked me to be his girlfriend at Baskin-Robbins.
Baskin-Robbins. Man, this theme keeps coming up. Yeah.
Wow.
So
and you had all three of your kids at Baskin-Robbins, right?
No, but we did get engaged there.
Oh, did you really?
And that's a part of when he told me he loved me. It all goes back to Baskin-Robbins.
Yeah.
Ice cream
I
is
love
so
ice cream.
foundational.
Yes, it's very foundational in our marriage and our relationship. We currently have, I think, 2 or 3 gallons of ice cream in our freezer.
I look forward to going there immediately after this. So you guys dated for how long? And then how long were you engaged before you got married?
So it was the middle of our senior year in college. I asked her if I could call her my girlfriend in January. The next year, January, I asked if I could call her my wife. And then we got married that summer.
And we were one of the 7707 weddings.
Oh, that's smart.
One of the millions.
That's smart. It's easy to remember.
Right?
Yeah, that's wise. So then how did you guys get from wherever you were at, newly married, up to Santa Clarita and to Grace?
Wow. Well, so she got me out to Azusa Pacific because she got some scholarships out there for her graduate work. And I went out there and I started teaching at Azusa High School. And so after that first year, then we got married. We moved to Pasadena, lived in Pasadena for 2 years, and then decided to move back to where family was. So it was either going to be Orange County or Santa Clarita. We ended up in Santa Clarita.
A little cheaper than Orange County. That kind of helped.
Just a little. I started working at Golden Valley High School. We found a church.
Yeah, I was teaching in Reseda at the time, so that also was a part of it. My commute from Santa Clarita versus Orange County just worked to come out this way. And we were looking for a church different than the one you'd grown up in, something that we could, find together. Because we'd had different experiences of church growing up. Yeah. And so we were looking for something kind of in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, I grew up at Santa Clarita Baptist Church.
Right.
And so then, we checked out a couple of churches.
Yeah, I had a very large church, big youth group setting growing up. And so we were looking at some different ones. And we ended up here on a Saturday night, visited Bliss, the newlyweds class, and it stuck.
What, you visited Bliss the first time you came?
We did.
That's awesome. Because you guys are part of that ABF?
Yep.
Which is amazing. So you've been at Grace for how long then?
Since 2010, so
I
13
don't know.
years.
You're the math guy, Nick.
You want me to do arithmetic right now?
The
Come on, man.
arithmetic is me. He doesn't like arithmetic.
I have experienced that a couple times. Yes. He's too smart for normal people math. It's so true.
He wants pure math.
Yeah.
Pure math.
Only revolving volume doors. Yeah.
Volume.
Volume.
Revolution, volume, all
Right.
those words.
So you guys are here. Tell us about your kids now. God has given you 3 amazing kids who are full
Yes.
of life.
Yeah, we've got Noah, who's our oldest, who's very tall. You see him around church. He's almost 12, 5th grader. He loves coding, all things technology.
He's the one of the 3 that I keep joking that he'll come to me and say, one day, he'll come to me and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to go hike the John Muir Trail." Like, the whole trail? Yeah. What's the big deal? That's a big trail. Where's your stuff? Where's your equipment? Dad, I got a water bottle. I'm good.
Right? Currently,
And a granola.
he wants to live that van life. Like, he sees the vans around town. He's
Sure.
like, that's my life.
Yeah.
He probably isn't my best communicator of the 3, but he's actually my biggest feeler. So when we talk about some things later on, I think he'll come into play with that. Lucas is our 10-year-old 4th grader, loves baseball, loves sports. He is his daddy's son. He's not my child. He's a big servant, sacrificial, and that is Nick to a T. He's always asking for ways he can help. And then Charlotte, she's our 8-year-old 2nd grader who is quite the communicator, is she not?
Yeah, you're never uncertain of what she is thinking. You always know what she's thinking.
Yeah.
Loves piano, loves the violin, loves her friends.
So tell me what you guys do for work right now. You're both in education. Where are you guys at?
Yes, I am at Golden Valley High School. This is my 14th year there, 17th year teaching high school math.
And I work for an independent study charter school. So basically what that means is parents who want to be a part of their kids' education and school them at home, but they're connected to a credentialed teacher and a school. And so I support families and kids in that setting.
You've been doing that for 8 years?
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. I think I've been in it for about 9 years. I stepped out of the classroom in between having Noah and Lucas.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, you were in the classroom for 4 years before that, right?
Yes, I think so. It all starts to blur together.
Yeah.
And then I'm back in school this year.
Right. What are you doing again?
I'm at CSUN and I'm doing education administration to hopefully one day either be a principal or work in the administration side of school. We'll see. Who knows? I'm just trying to survive it right now.
Right? Yes. One assignment at a time.
That's right.
Without getting into all the knife fights that can come with this discussion, you guys have chosen to be in public education. I'm curious why. So what is it that has attracted you about that? What are some of the challenges that you guys recognize just being Christians in that space? And then what are some of the opportunities that come to be in places where a lot of Christians maybe aren't all the time?
Well, I love working with teenagers. And I love the subject of math. I love my subject. But I also really love helping people. And that's a very, very easy way to help others, is helping them to understand concepts that are hard for them and getting them to graduation. And so that's why I really wanted to be a high school math teacher. It does present a lot of opportunities to share the gospel. I'm actually pretty shocked at times at what students recognize. It's the little things that you say or the little things you do that they recognize. I had one student come to me one time. It was outside of class. It was like during lunch, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Patey, can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I'm just sitting at my desk, and he goes, "I know you're a Christian and everything, so I was wondering, and so he was asking me something about the Bible, and that was like, what? I felt like I might have mentioned it once. I love reading the Bible. I go to church, and I believe in the one true God. I might have said something once like that at the beginning of the semester, but this was well into the second semester. So many opportunities to share the gospel. I am kind of nervous. I jokingly tell some of my friends, I think I'll be fired one day. I don't know for what exactly, just because there's a lot of crazy talk going on in our culture. And I think one day, somehow, I might be cornered with something. And I'm not going to mince words or not tell the truth. I think a lot of people would be shocked at how many students are affected by what's going on in the culture right now.
Yeah. I think it's just important, too, to have Christians in those spaces. I mean, we talk about this sometimes just in California in general. Like, if all the Christians leave California, well, then obviously there's no Christians here. Then we got to send missionaries back. I think that's true in public education, right?
Yeah.
That's not to say that there's not significant and unique contextual challenges that come with that. But I think it's so important that Christians inhabit those spaces. And as long as possible, at least, to continue to be both an example and a voice for truth.
I love that Nick's in the classroom setting. Kids come from a lot of hard places. When you start looking at the details, you realize, wow, that's an opportunity to work with 150 different kids every year and to love on them. I'm in a different setting now, and I'm passionate about education, that parents should be involved in education. And we live in a state where there's a lot of fighting going on politically about all of this. And so I love giving opportunities for parents to take an active role in their kids' education and finding ways to partner and personalize it. So it's a different setting, but it's another approach, because education is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Nick and I have lots of conversations about this, and we love what all of these schooling choices offer. And actually, California has the most schooling choices, even though there's so much fighting going on. So it's a neat place to work in. I do miss the classroom, so I have to remind myself it's just, helping and supporting in a different way. But we love what we do. But it is funny. We've had talks in the last couple of years of, hey, we might get kicked out of the public sphere eventually. We just have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Where there might come a time where we have to stand for something, and that doing so, could eventually lose our job. We just have to be ready that could be a possibility one day. I never thought we'd have those talks, but it seems to be escalating a little faster.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's the specter of what people think public education could be, right? I mean, depending on who you're reading or listening to. There are certainly some really egregious cases of people in public schools pushing agendas on kids. I would imagine that's not like every classroom in America. And so sometimes I think there's living in the tension of the reality, the possibility, without over-accentuating or over-hyping something that's just not true. What would be some principles that you would just give to parents as educators and parents yourself for how you guys think about your own educational choices as a family?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about that. Be involved, right? That's where it starts. We have a very interesting approach even with our own kids in education. 2 of mine are in the public school system. One of them is homeschooled with me this year. Take it year by year and kid by kid. When we started talking about educating our kids, I had this grand old plan of what I thought might happen. God definitely maneuvers that into what he actually wants to happen for sure. And that's been different than what we thought. But I think the key is to being involved and being plugged in. Have an ear to the ground to what's going on and talk with your kids about it. So if they're hearing it from you first, some of the things that are out there, it's not so scary. It's not reactionary. You're proactively preparing your kids for what they're going to hear in culture. And we have found some really valuable conversations with our kids through that. And when they're coming home telling you some of these things that is a red light in your mind, this is the culture that we live in. And so having those conversations is actually giving more of the gospel and giving more opportunities to have that. I think it's just knowing your kids and where they're at and being willing to not be locked into anything. Just take it year by year and kid by kid.
Yeah.
That's my approach. What do you think?
I keep going back to what the Bible says about teaching your kids on the way. So it's like on the way through the day-to-day life, the way they think, whatever their personality might be. But I think what Jenny said about making sure that you're open in conversation with your kids is very important, and making sure that you're involved in their education is very important. Jenny read a book, I don't remember which one it is, but it talked about chewing and spitting. And whenever you...
Mama Bear Apologetics.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll give a little plug.
Yeah. Whenever you encounter something, watching a show, watching a movie, or your kids are like, hey, what are they doing at the park? Those are opportunities for you to say, well, this is what they're doing. And is that what the Bible says? And what does the Bible say? And so you always take what is happening in culture and have conversations about it. Don't shy away from them.
And can I just say that with that chew and spit, as I was telling my kids, hey, I don't know if we're going to watch that movie. I'm not sure how I feel about it. They come to me, hey, Mom, don't you think we should chew and spit that? Wouldn't that be really good for us to have a conversation? I'm like, oh, you're using it against me.
Right.
Fantastic.
They're like,
You're
no,
so
totally.
smart.
I'm pretty sure the Lord wants us to watch this
Wow.
movie. Pretty sure God wants me to have this game, Mom. It's in the Bible. So
It's in the Bible. That's funny.
No, that's great. I mean, even for us, like we have a kid in Christian school, we have a kid in public school. And I just appreciate that kids aren't monolithic. They're not one size fits all. But I do appreciate the sentiment that there's an opportunity we have as parents in a bunch of different ways to walk with our kids through the complexities of life and to shepherd them along the way. I mean, we talked about our backgrounds before. My background was, even in college, we weren't allowed to interact with anything that was quote unquote worldly. So then I got out of college and I didn't have a paradigm for how to do that, right? It kind of came all rushing at me all at once. And certainly with wisdom, not for everybody, caveat, there can be something wonderful about getting to walk with your kids through some of those things. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Ryan Fogelsong here, letting you know that tickets for Grace Theater's spring production of Crossing Delancey by Susan Sandler, happening April 21st through the 23rd and 28th through the 30th, are now available. The show is set in Midtown Manhattan, where young single girl Isabel runs a cozy bookstore. Hilarity ensues as she finds herself forced to choose between fantasy and reality in her quest to find a happily ever after of her own. Get your tickets at the link in the description. Hope to see you there.
I think it's really great to get to know people, not just through what they do and who they are in their background, but even through some of the things that they've suffered in the past. You guys have been generous with Janelle and I think with others in the church, just letting him into some of the trials that you guys have walked. It's actually been interesting in some of the conversations we've had, even on this podcast, how frequent infertility and miscarriage and foster care has come up. And I think there are just complexities like that, right? There are things that happen in the midst of a broken world that squeeze us, that are simultaneously really painful and then incredible catalysts for growth.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you guys for being willing to talk even about miscarriage. I wonder if you just share some of what you've experienced through that, and then how the Lord has sustained you through those experiences.
Yeah, take us back to the year 2016. We had 3 beautiful kids and we wanted more. And we were pregnant with our 4th child, and everything was going well. I hadn't suffered miscarriages prior to this, and I was into my 2nd trimester, which made it difficult because so many announcements had already happened.
Oh, yeah.
Which there can be good and bad with that, right? But we ended up losing that baby, and when I delivered in the emergency room, we found out it was a boy. So he had a name. His name was Caden. That was a really difficult time. That was a dark time for me. I just remember coming home from the hospital and walking into Charlotte's nursery and feeling this fear and anxiety that I couldn't control and protect my kids. And I'd always known it in head knowledge, but I think in my heart, I felt so much in control of all the things in my life. And so it was the first kind of stripping down of walking through that. And we actually suffered another miscarriage a year later. That was a part of our story. And it was a painful time to try again and then to lose again. And then my body failed me in a way. I ended up with a blood transfusion, another surgery. And it was just like, Lord, what are you doing? It was really hard for us because Nick wasn't as connected emotionally, right? The baby was in me, and I just walked through so many of the physical and emotional changes your body goes through. And so we grieved really differently. And that was that. I think that was one of the hardest things, knowing, what I needed and me communicating that, because I wanted Nick just to know.
Yeah.
That felt very lonely at times to walk through.
Mm-hmm.
However, we had a really solid Bible study who surrounded us during that time. Bliss and how they came around us.
Oh, yeah. They got on the meal train. They made sure they were there. They were present if we needed someone to talk to. They even sent us on a little trip.
Yeah,
that's
so
incredible.
We could grieve away from our kids.
That's incredible.
It was just a dark time, and they really showed us the hands and feet of Jesus in tangible ways.
Yeah. I don't know how others without a group of friends like that can go through such hard times. The Lord definitely used them to shower love on us.
I think about that a lot. I mean, I don't know if with foster care, but I think just generally to think about the ups and downs of life. I just don't know how people can survive without close community. And then that's certainly just heightened by community that mirrors the love of Christ, right? That like tangibly has moved towards my family in real acts of love and service when we were really needy. I just can't imagine living in isolation or not having that.
And what's so difficult, I'll say for like the woman in this case, is you want to crawl away and hide from everyone. There's that feeling that you want to be away from everyone. And it's this very fresh wound that rolls in and out very unexpectedly. And what's hard with miscarriage is sometimes it's not a visible thing. For me, it was a little bit more. I was further along. But not everyone knows. And you don't want to bring everyone into that grief, but you're not yourself. And so you feel like you're this facade of a person. And it takes leaning in to that grief and being vulnerable and letting the tears and emotions come that also brings healing. But you have to let people love you. And that's hard because you're fighting a natural feeling to hide away.
Yeah.
And I'm an extroverted, very social person. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like, wow, I get it that people want to hide away, right? You have to fight that natural instinct.
Yeah, which is why, sometimes, like what you said earlier, you were far enough along, announcements have gone out, everybody knew. And I remember one time you said do we let everybody know yet? It's like, well, of course we do, because if something did happen, we want others to know. We want others to surround us. And so we usually would announce right away.
Yeah.
And not that everybody has to do that.
Sure.
I mean, that's just how we saw it. We saw it as, well, it's not something we're going to hide, and we're going to try to let others love on us if they wanted to.
You guys modeled that as well when you got into foster care. So talk about that decision. So what is it that made something that is crazy in most people's eyes seem appealing to you guys? And then talk a little bit about your journey and experience through that.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. We were talking this out, and we both were going through or having different experiences when foster care started becoming a question, whether or not we were going to get involved. It was before our second miscarriage where we actually started thinking about foster care. And I was listening to podcasts like TED Talks, or listening to news, and there was a lot of articles and stories coming up about foster care and kids going into foster care. And I distinctly remember one night laying in bed and having a moment thinking about how sad that would be if one of my kids lost both of their parents and was placed in another home with people that they didn't know. And it was weird. This has never happened to me before, but tears were coming out of my eyes. I was like, wow, that hurts. That really hurts. And I just started thinking that would be amazing to be a part of that process, even with all the hurt that you hear about in foster care.
Yeah, I mean, after the second loss, I didn't want to try for more pregnancies. When my body and the blood transfusion and what had happened, I just felt like it was a closed door for that time. We knew we wanted more kids. And so it was kind of this season of waiting and wondering. God had strategically placed some friends in our lives, and looking at you, Jared Burkholder and Janelle, our cousins. We just had some friends that we were drawing closer to, that were in this world. So as that becomes more part of your world, now it's coming onto your mind more, right? You're thinking about it more. We had moved recently in the last year or two to a house that we felt like was too big for us. And we felt like, gosh, we have this space. We want to give it back to God. He's not giving us a child in this way. Can we open it up in a different way? So we just started slowly conversing about this. And while Nick was dealing with some of that, which I didn't even know that he was processing that, I was in a preschool program here happened to be a lot of foster moms in the group that semester. And so one of the ladies shared about her story, and I remember coming home that night to Nick and giving him some statistics. And he turned to me at the kitchen counter and he's like, maybe we're going to be called to go into foster care. And so that started a journey. I felt like I was like on a chessboard, and like I just kept moving. The Lord just kept putting this around me and then moving me forward this way. And the more we walked forward, we just couldn't go any other way. It was just walking us toward this path. And it was actually a long process for us. We had a lot to fix on our house, which foster family agency, we had a lot to research, a lot to work through.
Yeah, they're pretty picky. I mean, if you don't have baseboards in a hallway or something, you got to put those baseboards in there.
Like, we have love, paint your walls. Okay.
Hold on, we have a bed for a child to sleep in, and you care about baseboards?
Yeah.
And listener, if you don't know, Nick Patey can fix/build anything.
Yes, he can.
He's done my kitchen. I handed him tools, and I was useless. So you were probably in the process of fixing stuff yourself. I did not.
Yeah.
I broke a window. I did that.
That's
so
true.
I get that. Yeah, you were like in the process of doing that, and then it speed it up.
I
right?
broke a window. Yeah. Nick, help.
Help me, please. So then walk us through kind of your first placement and how that went.
Well, it's funny. We weren't getting a call for a while. We were on the list. We ended up having two very quick placements. One was not a normal placement, respite. For those of you who know foster, we were just caring for a child in a time that they needed away from their foster family. That quickly turned into, this child's not going back to the foster family. Would you adopt this child? We took like the whole roller coaster of foster care.
They don't ask right away, would you like to adopt this child? They say like, is that a possibility?
Yeah, would you be willing? That's true.
Right.
In my mind, it was like I had to make that decision.
But that hint is
ready.
like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you feel. And so we went this whole roller coaster. It was a lot, that one placement that we had, and it ended up clearly not working out. But we felt the whole roller coaster of emotions. And I remember seeing that child go, and we were a mess that night. It was like a quick 8-day period, but our kids saw us walk through that. And we were very blessed to get a follow-up text with where that little guy went and to be connected to his new forever family. And I felt like God gave us that because he knew that we needed to get our hearts prepared for what foster was going to be. And we had so many conversations with our kids where they got to walk through a little bit of grief in a short amount of time with this baby who we were connected to, and just get our hearts prepared to love on someone for a little while or a long while. That became kind of our mantra.
Mantra.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that, whatever this child needs for a little while or a long while will be a safe place for them.
Will be a safe place, and we will be available to love on them. And and I think the biggest lesson we learned right away was we don't have any control over that.
Right,
and
that whole control stripping thing.
So there's, Jenny experienced that with the miscarriage and how that gave her an anxiety about not having control over things. And then God was like, well, now you're going to walk through this door where you have absolutely no control.
Let's
over
sign
what's
up
gonna
for
happen.
it. Yeah,
right.
We kind of chuckle at that.
We'll do it again, actually. Thanks.
I'll take the no control door.
I'll take a double portion of that. Yeah.
And then that led us into the little girl, who we'll call Rosie.
Yeah.
When did we get her? End of October 2020. So right during all the COVID. And we ended up having her in our home for about a year and a half before we said bye to her. We just hit the year mark of saying bye. There's been a lot that we've been kind of processing this last month, actually, about that.
I'm curious. So you guys have described your grief in miscarriage, that first reunification. What's that been like for your kids? So it's one thing to grieve as a person. How have you walked your kids through seasons of loss and grief?
When we knew for sure that Rosie was going to go live with her aunt and her uncle, we asked if we could drive her out there and hand her off.
Because it was in another state.
Yeah. And so we started a conversation early with the kids when we learned that she wasn't going to stay with us. And so we really wanted that chance to have that time of letting go and getting used to that feeling of she's not staying with us anymore. And so we got to drive all the way out. We got an old motorhome. We fixed it up.
New to us, but very old.
And then we drove her all the way out to Colorado, and we got to have many conversations with the kids while we had her, and then right after when we were driving home without her. And we did camping. We had conversations around the fire and had many opportunities to talk about how does that make you feel? How do you feel? How are you doing right now?
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. Right before we left, we kind of facilitated a goodbye where everyone who was in our circle could come and see her and pray over her. And it was really important to us to have those milestones of just closure for people who were involved. And I'll never forget, I think I was bawling. You were there, Jared. We were
also bawling.
We were praying over her, and my kids prayed. And I was shocked that they, that they were catching it, that they were a part of this. And Janelle actually was really helpful in something we did to help them process the goodbye. We got these little books of photo albums. My kids still look at those. And they got to be a part of, it almost makes me tear up, got to be a part of putting the pictures in, and Charlotte writing about what she loved about Rosie and that was really helpful for their hearts because they didn't know fully, right, what they're processing. But Nick's right on the intentional time. Right before we left, we had a weekend away with our kids, just them. We needed that 5, right, to be really close and clear that they were safe, that we're together. And I remember asking them what they felt about foster care and what were some of the hardest things. And I thought that there was this lack that we were so tied away, that my time in these...
They were going to complain. Well, you're never with us. You're always doing this for, the meeting or for this other thing for Rosie. And that wasn't what they complained about at all.
They complained about poopy diapers and if she screamed or whatever. And I was like, oh, look, Lord, how you protected their hearts in that. And after we said bye to Rosie and we spent time with her family, I just felt like God carried our motorhome out there. Like there's no other words to describe it. I could tell you moment after moment of things that he just gave our hearts of what we needed to get through. A warm hug from a friend who lived 15 minutes from them. Time together to say goodbye to Rosie. And then on the drive home, asking Noah, hey, how are you doing? And him saying, I'm doing okay because I see how much they love her. Just confirmation, right? The Lord just worked in that and he protected our kids. And we asked them, would you guys want to foster again? As we're driving home. Yes.
Absolutely.
It shocked me.
That's awesome. For everybody who was watching, you guys modeled really well what it looks like to grieve well as Christians, right? What it looks like to acknowledge pain and to not shy away from that, but to do that with hope. I'm thankful for that. You guys were very instructive to Janelle and I think to others through that. So one more thing I want to talk about. There's no easy way to transition to this because this is a totally different topic. Everybody who knows you knows that you guys are like the highest capacity people ever. I've needed Nick probably 9 times in my life. He's needed me not once. And usually I'm
Not
like, hey,
true.
Nick, can you help me with this? And he's like, I can give you 43 minutes on next Tuesday. I'm like, jeez.
I will take
So
it.
specific. You guys are incredibly high capacity. You're involved in a lot of things. You're teachers, you're in school, you got kids, you're coaching, you're fixing things, you're involved in ministry here, you're involved in discipleship. What are some principles that help guide for you guys what to be involved with, how to say yes, how to say no to things? Because I think we all feel that, right? We all feel squeezed. I think you guys do that really well. So as a couple, as individuals, what helps you navigate the kinds of things you're going to be involved with as a family? Even the things we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes.
I think one of the things that we try to do is whatever we're involved with, we want to try to have the whole family involved if it's possible. It's not always possible, but it helps with still spending time with family and having that time with family. It's really hard to know when we're at the too much line.
We're usually over the line when we realize it's too much. Something that Nick and I were talking about, because we were like, what does guide us? And part of what guides us is we view life as ministry. And so if we view life as ministry, God has gifted us as teachers and we have summers off. So our thought is, well, where can we love and give our time back to the Lord in the summer, whether it be Ecuador or VBS? If we love working with high schoolers, how can we bring that in? For us, our home, we had more than enough space. So how can we use our home then, whether it be a grace group or whether it be foster care? That's just kind of what guides us, is what God's given us. And then how can we use that for him?
Yeah, I think about where we can fit our strengths, or what is it that we already love doing. Like, I love working with teenagers. That's why we're working with Grace students.
Yeah.
We have space in our home. That's why we really want to open up our home to another foster child maybe one day.
So those are the principles that guide us. Everyone's built differently.
Totally.
Sometimes I feel bad that if we're capacity people, not everyone's capacity people, right? But everyone can look at their own life and where they're at and think about, how can I use the time or the strengths that God's gifted me, and how can I give that back to the Lord?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easier to say yes to things that we can see as for the kingdom. It's easier to say no to things when it's not.
Grace family, if you haven't got a chance to spend some time with Nick and Jenny Patey, you should totally do that. They've been a huge encouragement to us. I know, both anecdotally and just from hearing from others, how much you've meant to lots of other people. Your generosity and openness, the Lord has used here to disciple and to comfort and encourage. I'm just thankful for you guys. Thanks for being willing to come on here. Thanks for your honesty and transparency.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe to Magnify Podcast so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. We would love to hear from you, so if you have any questions you'd like to ask in our mailbag, you can email them to magnify@gracebaptist.org, and we will answer them on the show. Thank you so much for streaming.